Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to Tekpon. Today our guest is Alex, the founder and CEO at RELAYTO. Hello.
Hey, Christian, great to be on.
Thank you for joining our podcast. Alex is also a podcast of the first multimedia podcast out there, but he'll also tell us more about it in the upcoming minutes. First of all, please tell us what your company does.
You bet. So Relay2 turns your static documents and PDFs and videos into all singing, all dancing, interactive experiences. We use AI to do this in a few seconds, so everybody who is a traditional creator of business content could become a creator of extraordinary modern experiences.
Okay, what would you say is the biggest problem that you solve for companies?
There's two fundamental problems. I think the funny thing is, think of something called a PDF, right, which has been around since many of our audiences have been born around the same time, right? So it's this like a legacy format. It's great for printing, obviously, and it still is the default standard that we're sending around, consuming on our mobiles. And it's kind of bizarre because I don't see faxes being used in most cases, but the PDF somehow got stuck around. So one of the easiest things to think about is we help you take that format that you're already familiar with as sort of de facto business document standard that's reliable, and transform it into something amazing. And I think otherwise people just go to the status quo and just keep doing what they've been doing, and they keep getting the same results. And the results are roughly, if somebody's really interested in your stuff, right,
Yes.
and they have to review legal documents, they'll do it. They'll put up with whatever they have to put up with. But if you're trying to market something, to sell something, to excite somebody, you can't bore them as a
Yes.
print medium on paper. So we help people get their ideas across in a competitive idea market. So that's one alternative. The second one is some people are trying to do this, and they've been trying to do it by saying, well, the website tools are out there, and so we could try to build a website instead of building a document, right? And there are various website builders out there, and Wix and Squarespace, and I think that's fantastic generally for small businesses or for pretty simple idea for e-commerce, obviously. But when it comes to complex content, regulated content, it becomes very expensive, and therefore it rarely gets done. It takes time, extra approval cycles, and so therefore people again keep gravitating to the status quo on these kind of let's do just documents, and stick in 1990s versus bring stuff into 2024 where everything is engaging, AI centric, and really centers around the consumer.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I love to hear the top features of the platform. What are the most loved ones?
Well, the Relate is one of those amazingly long journeys where we started as an agency and we did a bunch of experimentations with amazing clients, right? Like Accenture and the other folks that are sophisticated creators. And so we tried a lot of features about what works. And what we found is there's a long tail of things that people like when they transform the content. But there's some that, especially with AI, are becoming out of the box capabilities that blow people away that seem simple, but actually, very powerful. So one, let's say you have a document, right? And it's long. It's like over 10 pages. So one of the most basic things that you have in a book, you have some sort of chapter structure, especially nonfiction books, right? And so you could, and if you're clever about it, you could come up with interesting chapters so they help you jump around. Well, for whatever reason, most documents don't go that far, or they have pretty rudimentary tables of contents.
Right.
And then they are only on the second page, and then you never really see them. So one of the lowest hanging fruit that we found is that if you create a dynamic interactive table of contents where you have nested content inside it,
Right.
and it's available at all time and it's persistent, it blows away the consumption pattern for your audience because they can feel like they could get to the resources they need. They end up spending more time anyway on the content because it feels like it's responsive to them. And the best analogy I would say to this is think of a conversation, Christian, that you're having with somebody, and you need to listen through 10 minutes of boring crap they don't give a shit about to get to the 1 minute of interesting stuff. Versus
Right.
you know what you're interested in, and you
You
could
skip.
get to that immediate stuff right away, right? Then you're like, oh, great. Oh, there's other stuff I'm interested in. Let's dig into that. So you feel as if you're in control as a consumer, and you may still discover stuff. But funny enough, some people do like the linear content structure, right? They like their cultures where a linear approach matters, or subject matters where you really want to go sequentially. And so we still want that. So you want a linear and nonlinear navigation. And that, like, AI allows us to get that out across the board. And then again, once people are in some section, they're not just on page 54, whatever that means. They know exactly where they are and where they could kind of jump from there. So that is a simple but a non-obvious win. The second thing is that the more movement and video and animation and interactivity you have inside your asset, the more likely you will increase the engagement and you'll increase the interaction, which really means conversion. So if you're a marketer, you know these words called conversion. That's kind of how marketers, measure themselves. But even if you're a non-marketer, you want people to dig into your content, right? And you want them to have memorable, powerful emotions associated with your ideas. So from simple things like adding a background video that evokes your brand or kind of the main idea that you're doing and that just feels modern, that gets you on page one. That immediately scores you points. Like, hey, this is not your granddad's PDF built in a basement somewhere in Soviet Union, era,
Yes,
right? Like,
yes.
you appreciate that. So,
Yes.
and then you have immersive YouTube videos, right? But the key word is immersive, because you could put a YouTube video link on a PDF, and what's going to happen if you click on that, Christian? Like, let's say you click on a PDF YouTube. What do you think is going to happen?
Open a new link, wait a few
Open a new
seconds
link.
to load.
Takes time to load. You maybe have to see an ad before, depending on your YouTube setup.
Yes.
And then after the thing is YouTube recommends you the next asset, right? Which has
close the PDF.
Nothing to do with your asset, right? Nothing. It could be like whatever is the last political thing that makes you really angry. That could be what you're watching, right? Which is what mediums are designed for. And so ability to create an immersive repurposing of your YouTube or Vimeos or Wistias or whatever video app, or your own MPEG-4 files if it's secure content, that becomes the animating in one click, so you're kind of people pay attention to movement. And then when you're doing these animations, the idea is that you kind of can highlight what's the main thing I want to do, right? Do I want to click on this video? Do I want to not even click on anything? I want a video to play right away. Or do I want to click on something? So we add this interactivity layer on a page, so almost the core document could be a canvas for the interactive elements. Some people build them completely from scratch. Some people upload existing assets. So that's feature number 2. And the third one, and I would say became a learning for us as we started with single document format, like a PDF. We then people said, well, I have many PDFs. How do I package them all together? And then some people said, well, I want to have videos together, and like not inside your PDF, but kind of next to it somewhere, because they're long and they deserve their own attention. It's also a type of document. So we built something called a hub, and you could think of a hub as a version of Netflix that's not for your fold, like not kind of for video stuff, but for every type of content. Embedded documents like Airtable, forms, videos, RELAYTO documents, etc.
Oh, nice.
And so we basically are, if the original version of RELAYTO just disrupted the document, here we're disrupting the folder. And we're saying what's the medium that people like to consume content, that they care about? Well, everybody knows the Netflix type of interface. It's going to be, you could scroll vertically, horizontally. And so people are enjoying this capability. And that is a packaging that then gets you analytics, because you can then distribute it anywhere. And then you are actually serving up smarter and smarter content to your audience as a sender. And then you could say, hey, we put these 3 things together. Nobody looks at thing number 1. Everybody looks at thing number 2. How can we improve it? What's the difference? And so it leads to a feedback loop, which is something that hasn't really existed in a document type of content. So
You're right.
Those are the 3 features. Immediate, like little things like transformation and AI chats to kind of get people the information they need. Number two, it's enriching the experience, making it much more modern with videos. And number three, packaging the content together from different mediums in one destination.
Thank you for sharing this. And who would you say is Relato most useful for? Who is the ideal customer?
This is a challenging question for any company that has built a horizontal platform that has a lot of applications, right? Like, and so one of the things that we've realized about RELAYTO is that effectively we're building a number of content apps that could be used, right? Some of them are used in top of the funnel marketing, where like you historically get some sort of, people send you, oh, download this PDF, right? And then you fill out a form that asks for your first name, last name, your child's name, all this sort of jazz that and then you get a PDF. And so instead of that, people are sending the RELAYTO link, which they could still download a PDF version, but it's a much richer experience and engages people more. And maybe the lead capture happens later. So that's a top of the funnel marketing use case. And this matters for marketers that want to really contribute, not just like a fake lead, but a real engaged user,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Then there is marketers that are even further in the sales cycle. They're kind of in the product marketing or account-based marketing, or there are some marketers that we worked with that support proposals, making them really beautiful experience in competitive high-stakes situations. Those guys love it because effectively this becomes a glue, and then they give it to salespeople, and sales and account managers start using the platform. So that's sort of a marketing angle. We've seen this being used in customer and partner enablement. It's basically changing the word enablement to experience. So like it's sort of like buyer-centric content, partner-centric content versus partner enablement, buyer enablement. So I think like sales enablement, those are, to us, kind of they tend to be repositories, whereas we're saying, hey, nobody wants to consume a repository. It just sounds sounds like a dusty library. But you want to have an experience, right? Like in our consumer lives, we want to have experience. So I think it's anywhere where you have complexity, and ultimately, and where you want to deliver a better experience for your employees, your customers, your partners. So that's a broad mandate. But I do think marketers tend to be the ones that kind of are most aware around this, and they sort of historically know that they need to do this, but they can't. And then other people in their organizations, like HR people, they ask them, hey, help me, or salespeople, hey, help me. Like, people are not reading my stuff. I can't bore people into buying.
Exactly.
Right. And so then the marketers help them, and because it's this easier tool, it allows them to help to spread. But then I have to tell you, Christian, the best surprise has been, we have like city government folks using it. We have nonprofits using it that don't even have anybody titled marketing in their organization. We obviously have HR and folks like selling like the employee experiences, employee benefits, communications. So it's been a very pleasant surprise that if you build something that's simple enough and powerful enough, a lot of people want their ideas communicated across, and they're struggling with it. So that's our bigger vision, is bring all important ideas to life.
And what is the story of the company? Did you face this problem while working at the agency?
Yeah, so I think multiple kind of genesis ideas. So I'll go way back. My very first professional gig was at a little company called Microsoft on the Office team. And we were looking at like, why is PDF taking over Word and PowerPoint as the last mile format? And then throughout my career as a consultant, as a B2B marketer at SuccessFactors, and then running my own agency, which did some marketing and content, we kept trying to figure out, well, why are people like, why can't we, for complex, important ideas, the ones that really matter, why can't we create engaging experiences? And so the aha was that building a website is interesting, but it sort of doesn't really scale.
Yes.
And particularly in regulated industries and complex industries, the unlock is, take existing content and make it awesome. And then it's easier shift, right? Because then you could tweak your existing formats, make them more web friendly. And eventually we have, for example, build from scratch product. But I think the unlock was, how do you take a PowerPoint user, right? Or a power word user that does use it for proposals and complex RFP responses, and turn them into a web designer, developer, creator without even thinking about that. And that unlock is a very much an itch I had, personally, because it's only that many times that you could like knock and like try to beg for design resources if you're a marketer or seller.
Yeah. And how big is the team today?
We are north of 15 people. And the team is growing. We have like hubs, obviously, in the U.S., and that's where majority of the customers are, and where our roots are in Silicon Valley. But we also believe in a distributed team, and we have a very talented team, for example, in Latvia, which is part of EU, that has become our kind of design and template development and customer support hub. And so that team effectively, has its own founder that is a former founder, and they're creating value, for us by having, a bunch of former founders are kind of part of our team. So I think we can that way operate a pretty globally
Good mindset.
oriented team. But I'd say the roots and the foundation, the investor community, some of the earliest customers are all Silicon Valley.
And what would be your best piece of advice for a starting founder?
I think the lesson for us is that we fell in love with the problem. Was in the agency mode. We were like always thinking about like, well, could we productize some things? And actually, the first attempt at productizing something really didn't work. But we just like it was more like, hey, let's build something from scratch, and it just didn't like we could use it, but nobody else wanted to use whatever we built. So it was sort of a sobering moment. But then when you got in the problem and you tried to understand it and feel it, and you feel more confident, right? You feel like you're doing it like whatever the outcome is going to be, you're going to do it. And so I think for a lot of our team, for me personally, we just felt like, hey, at the end of the day, if we can have scientists and really people with the best ideas who tend to be pretty bad at communicating, if we can help them get their quality ideas out in a way that's digestible and modern and has impact in the world, this is really rewarding. Like it's probably, unless I'm saving lives, I'm, enabling people to save more lives faster is the next best thing. So we kind of are operating in that mode. And I think the second piece is the kind of related to this is that you have to pull back up and say, like, what are important human activities? And so you could say, hey, RELAYTO is a SaaS and AI startup and kind of have kind of all this excitement about SaaS and AI. But actually, I think something even bigger, like we're in modern attempt at reimagining sophisticated storytelling for important things, which is, one of the cradles of human civilization came out of that. And so when you kind of have these moments of like, oh my God, we're reimagining the book, or we're, we're kind of accelerating the pace of innovation. Or in the modern day and age, people are becoming dumber, AI is becoming smarter. So we're helping people stay smart and really like learn to consume the hard stuff versus the shallow stuff we're fed through TikTok algorithms, right? Like the more substantive things, but we're kind of making it a bit more digestible and accessible and interesting. And we could reuse TikTok inside it even, right? To give people like mental breaks. That's really powerful. So I think I encourage anybody to connect whatever they're doing to things that motivate them at a bigger scale. And for me, like whenever you're having a tough day, it's like the part of it is the problem, but part of it is like, what's the bigger mission behind what you're doing? And that helps you overcome anything.
Thank you so much.
I don't know, Christian. What about you? You're doing entrepreneurial things. What do you think is the biggest advice you have for founders?
To always stay curious and learn from others. And for myself, you also run a podcast, and I wanted to chat more about it as part of the final part. The podcast helps me every single day realize I'm not that good as my ego imagines, and I learn every single day from other people that are great. And I stay humble, respectful, and learn from others. So I think this is crucial because no matter how good you are, you always have something to learn.
That's a great intro to talking about the podcast. But you know what's funny? I will say one thing, because you and I, you're in Romania. I kind of come from, as you know, from Ukraine, back in the Soviet era, and we were actually we came from Soviet Union, so it was kind of a refugee journey, trying to figure things out, like 2 suitcases, few $100 type of thing, no phones, nothing. And I look back on that journey. I was about 13
Wow.
when we made that journey as a family, and quickly became the only English speaker, super proficient English speaker in the family, and so had to play serious role. But I look at that era and I say, gosh, whatever I have to do as my startup is like not that big of a deal, right?
Exactly.
Like, and I admire the journey that my parents had to go through that was kids and dependent, their parents. And so I feel like that's a secret weapon that like is sort of non-obvious, right? Like, and I think everybody, this is my thing, like my little journey. Everybody has some crucible event they had earlier in their life where they surprise themselves.
Yes.
And so I encourage any founder to look back and say, hey, I was able to handle, whatever the world threw at me, and kind of come back to these moments, right? Because I think that gives you the superpowers to go
exactly. The challenges now are nothing compared to other problems.
Yeah.
But I have one last question for you, Alex, before you close it off. What's your favorite software that you use, but apart from RELAYTO?
We are we within RELAYTO, and like in addition, we kind of not super creative, but we use a lot of AI tools, right? So from
name one?
AI to like I think probably we've enabled we've enabled people who are non-native English speakers to produce quality content through a bunch of prompt engineering that allows us to put together some marketing materials, internal materials, customer support materials in a way that's more professional than probably something that we would have been able to do a few years ago. It was folks in Silicon Valley getting 100x the compensation or whatever, and a lot more egos. So I think that has been an enabler in kind of building a lean startup. And then we're enabling that through our tool as well, like for people to discover and unlock information. So we're using it on the through the APIs as well. So it's been a great enabler for us, and unlock, and really a new chapter in the business is kind of, we went from the agency roots to the self-serve SaaS, and AI is kind of an extra accelerator, and that's been fantastic.
Perfect. Those are my questions for today. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'll give a plug for the podcast as well, last minute. So it's called Experience-Focused Leaders, and check it out. I talk about RELAYTO a little bit there, but the theme is really to invite founders and CEOs of publicly listed or kind of very large companies who are really influential in their space, but at the same time are really thoughtful about how to create great customer experiences, employee experiences, buyer experiences. And then we invite people who have written books on communications, customer experience as well. So we're mixing, experts with practitioners at the highest level of the game. And we're using RELAYTO to turn it into multimedia. So you could have a ebook nice. From a podcast. We call it the Pod Book. So that's why it's the first multimedia podcast.
Yes.
Because we pioneered that. So hope you get a chance to check it out, and your audience gets a chance to check it out. And I want to salute, Christian, your work with Tekpon as well. Like I think while I have the floor, I think you guys are doing a tremendous job bringing communities together, creating a platform of where you aggregate things like reviews from various sources, creating a core base, because it's a confusing market. So keep on bringing education and knowledge into the ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Alex. You are great, and I hope to see you soon in Dublin for SaaS Talk.